this constant need for growth can only grow so far because it grows above and beyond what can be produced physically. Yes. And there's no more countries to rape. There's no more countries to pillage. There's nothing left to keep this bubble, this debt bubble that you're talking about going. Now, what's on the other side of the debt bubble when we can no longer pay, default happens? What comes next, and how does that serve the bankers who are driving the debt bubble in the first place? Or are they just so consumed and intoxicated on this ever-expanding money supply and the money and power that brings it, that they don't really plan for what comes on the other side of the debt bubble?
Well, let me first totally rebut the last suggestion, and I know that you don't really mean that, but that you're just asking it. But no, they know exactly what they're doing, and what they're doing is they are completely ruining the West. And the fact of the matter is, people still don't get where we're at the timeline. But we are very close to world government, and the final ascent of the New World Order and its world government has begun with the lockdown, basically. And the lockdown was associated with heavy money printing as well, to keep the debt bubble going for the last few years. But what's coming next? What's coming next now is that they're going to stop debt growth. And they're going to do this in various ways, because they're going to force a new gold standard on the world. And the fiat system was aimed at inflation, because we see the trend. That's inflation, more and more money. But gold standards are used by the banking cartel to create deflation. And they're both lethal monetary diseases. Inflation with more and more debt. Deflation leads to catastrophic depression and a large-scale impoverishment. And what's coming next now is that this. Let me go back to this chart, because we see this eternal growth, but that is going to be stopped with this gold standard. And they're going to do this with this gold standard that is being forced upon us by both the BRICS nations, because they're planning on implementing a gold-backed and gold-based CBDC, central bank digital currency. That's what's next from the BRICS, especially Russia and China, of course, who run the BRICS. And but also the ECB is going to back the euro with gold.
So how does that? Sorry to interrupt you there. Just if you can explain how gold creates deflation. What's the mechanisms behind gold creating deflation? Because didn't we run on a gold-backed system for a long time and it was relatively successful?
Well, let me stop share here again. But well, successful, you can say successful, but let me tell you how successful it was with the bankers, because they installed, the British economy was financed with tally sticks during the medieval era and beyond. And when the Bank of England was installed in 1694, as we were discussing, the first thing that the Bank of England did was create a gold standard. They installed a gold standard, and they destroyed the old money supply of the British kingdom. There was a kingdom at the time, and later under the Bank of England it became an empire. But so they destroyed the tally stick
system.
Yeah. And what then happened was a long-term deflation in the British economy, which did allow for which also redistributed very strongly from the working people to the rich, because what happens on the deflation is that money becomes worth more, which is very pleasant if you have a lot of money, but it's not so good if you are in debt, because the deflation increases the value of debt. Because money becomes worth more, the debt also becomes worth more. And so there was a huge redistribution ongoing, and this lasted over centuries, Lawrence. And this led to these extreme working hours that we saw in Britain in the latter days of the empire, say 1880 or so, when the common man literally worked 80 to 100 hours per week just for sustenance. So from 50 weeks per year to 100 hours per week. So that's what deflation caused in the European and British economies in those years. And but what it is going to create here is that it's going to end debt growth. And then we were previously discussing that the debt has to grow, the money supply has to grow with 6% per year to finance economic growth and interest payments. But then this can no longer be financed with extra money. So then the interest payment starts eating away at the money supply, and this creates deflation. And this deflation next means that the debts will grow in value, and it will lessen economic activity. And if the economic activity starts lessening and it starts becoming less, then debts will become unpayable. The mega debt that we have outstanding will become unpayable. And then we will see more and more deflation, because if the debt becomes unpayable, then the money that was created with the debt also ceases to exist. And there will be more and more and more deflation, and the whole debt will start collapsing, because we also saw this with the crypto holocaust the last 2 years before, that if they use their collateral for these cryptos as to loan among each other, and then these debts could not be paid, and then the next also defaulted. And this is what the great concern is, that within the financial system, once the defaults start, if the one debtor can't pay, then the next can't pay also. And then next and the next, and it will start cascading throughout the entire financial system, and the whole debt will implode. That is the great concern and the key cause of what is coming in the years ahead, in the implosion of the debt bubble. And this will really, it's unspeakable what this is going to do to the West.
What we're seeing in the news frequently now is, in the UK at least, is the Bank of England's announcement that they're going to run with CBDC. Is that the right? I forget the name. Yeah, in 2025, is that the Bank of England is going to launch digital currency, and that seems to be what they're going to foist upon us. They're going to force it upon us. They're going to remove cash from the economy, and they're going to be using digital cash that the Bank of England will control. Is this what's on the other side of the debt bubble? Is this the plan? And what does that mean? Can you give us a bit of insight into this whole new digital currency that they're trying to bring in?
Yeah, this is an absolute huge consolidation that is going on in the banking cartel, and the Greatest Depression, which I call the Greatest Depression, which is coming as a result of the implosion of the debt bubble, that's really going. I can't stress enough that the destruction is going to be massive. We're going to see huge population decline in the West, throughout the West, especially in the UK and in America, if all signs, if the signs are correct, but also in Europe, and it's going to be worse than the Soviet collapse. But there's also going to be a huge consolidation and a huge worsening of bank money tyranny, because this CBDC, the central bank digital currency, how they are going to implement it first is, if we can't pay our debts, then the banks are going to go bust. And if the banks run the current payment systems, if you transfer money in whatever way, then this is operated by commercial banks. And if the commercial banks cease to exist, and are consolidated, and the debts are consolidated in states and central banks, etc., then they will also lose control of the payment system. And then the central bank digital currency will be wheeled in as a solution to the problem that they created, because problem reaction solution is always how they operate. They create the problem, the debt, then the reaction default, and then solution CBDC. And the CBDC will be a heinous tyranny, because this is programmable money, and the central bankers will start deciding on what you can spend your money and on what not. And this is really very grim. And you know what they want? We will own nothing, and you'll eat bugs, etc., etc. That's what they promise us, and they're not at all. And the way they're going to achieve this, because this is the key thing. People have been talking about these heinous lines by the World Economic Forum, but nobody is talking about how they're going to do it. And this is how they're going to do it. And then they will give you CBDC, and people will be forced into it because the payment systems of the banks are going to go bust, going to be destroyed. So people will have to pay. They will need the CBDC. Also, there's going to be mass default in the West with mass unemployment, mass poverty. The government will dole out a little basic income via the CBDC, which you then can spend only with major multinational corporations that are part of the control system, and there you can buy your bugs for sustenance.
I'll pass on the bugs. Thank you very much. But I don't think it's all doom and gloom, even though it sounds like it is. I think in those type of situations, that's when cash becomes contraband, doesn't it? You know, actual physical cash actually becomes contraband. Eggs become contraband. But let's talk a little bit about solutions, because that's the master plan, the diabolical genius master plan by the banking cartel. I don't think it's all going to go their way. I hope there's going to be some divine intervention. And what are your thoughts on solutions? Because I know the 𝗕𝗨𝗏 is a solution. You know, you're offering an alternative to this usury-based system of theft and slavery, which is interest-free cash that gives us liquidity, that gives us the ability to trade with each other on a much more efficient basis, and therefore we can create prosperity without the cost of usury being on. So the 𝗕𝗨𝗏 is one solution. What other ideas have you got? Because this is a white pill show, right? We talk about black pills, but we always talk about ways that we can combat it so that we're not demoralized, that we can take action in some way, shape or form, even if it's only little steps. So give us a little bit of your white pill, Anthony.
Yeah, well, you know, there's both. So I will give you the white pill, but the black pill is really very real. I mean, people, you know, and the reason why I come with the black pill is because I want to motivate people to prepare.
I'm not against the black pill. I think it's reality, and I think it's important that we talk about those things. But at the same time, we've always got to think about, okay, well, regardless of what's coming, what actions can I take to prepare so that when it comes, it doesn't hit us as hard, and that we can react accordingly because we've thought about these scenarios in our heads.
Exactly. So, you know, the black pill is the scenario of the bankers. We need to deal with it, and there are many steps that we can take to prepare for ourselves and our loved ones for what is coming. And the first thing is to know the problem and to understand the grimness of the situation. The next step is to start preparing, and there are a number of key issues. In the first place, the commercial banks are going to go bust. So if you have savings in the bank, then you're unprepared. And what they're going to do is, when these banks go bust, there's going to be no more bailouts, because in the last bailout that we had in 2020, we saw inflation going totally through the roof. And this is the reason why they can't print more money. So they can't bail out the banks anymore. And the next, what was going to happen next is bail-ins. So the banks are going to confiscate deposits, and that's how they're going to cover their own losses. And
where would you suggest people put their assets that are in banks then? Where's the safe spot?
Yeah, you need to get out of the bank. That's a key step. So if you're a pensioner, if you have some investments in the bank, also paper markets, like don't buy any crap on the stock exchange, all that stuff. Liquidate all that paper-based value. You need to get out of the paper-based speculative economy. And the best thing to do is